Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today, we're talking Daniel Jones. We're talking players coming out and really expressing how much optimism and confidence they have in the New York Giants, young quarterback going into his third season. We know this is a year he needs to take that big developmental leap forward. Enough with the games, enough with the nonsense, enough with the fumbles and the dumb mistakes. I read a really great article by Dan Duggan this morning. He talks to Dan Orlovsky, and he basically says, you have to eliminate those 10 to 12 plays per year that are just like, you can't be making those plays. Those are like pee-wee plays, pee-wee mistakes, throwing the ball when you don't need to, fumbling when you don't need to. Sometimes you just have to live to see another down. This is what Eli Manning was so good at in the past, throwing the football away at times. He had his fair share of turnover issues as well. But I'll tell you what, he also learned, as his career went on, sometimes the self-sack is the best way. Sometimes you just got to go down before you take an unnecessary hit. You have to go down before you try to make a play happen when it's 2nd and 5 and you're trying to force a ball and you don't have a guy open. Just go down. Live to see another down. 3rd and 10 is a lot better than the opposition having the football. So there's a lot we're going to talk about in this little segment here regarding players coming out and providing optimism regarding Daniel Jones and what we expect from him this upcoming year in terms of projections, Anthony. But before we dive into all the good stuff today, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing real good, and I'm excited to talk about Daniel Jones, as I always am. Every time we have a topic about Daniel Jones, I'm excited because this is his year. Year 3 for Daniel Jones. It's a prove it or lose it. You'll lose your starting position if you don't prove it this year, and it's going to be really crucial for him. The Giants went out there, spent a whole bunch of money, got a whole lot of playmakers around them. Of course, the offensive line might be the only excuse you can give Daniel this season, but at the end of the day, we saw a lot of improvement last season. I think those 10 to 12 plays that you're talking about was like 20 plays in year 1. Cut it down to 10 to 12. Now he needs to cut it down to 2 or 3, right? So just kind of shrink that stuff down and really improve year to year. And this is the year where you really got to put it together. Otherwise, especially with the Giants having 2 first-round picks next year, you're talking about maybe moving on from Daniel Jones, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'm very high on Daniel Jones. I am a Daniel Jones believer. I believe in Danny Dimes, and I do think that this year he will establish himself as a franchise quarterback. I think we saw a lot last year where he was getting towards that point. He was moving towards establishing himself in that way. But this is the year. Put it all together. Prove all the doubters wrong. Prove all of us believers like myself and Alex right. And we will be able to ride off into the sunset with Daniel Jones as our franchise quarterback. And I'm excited for that because I do believe that's what's going to happen. So I'm excited to talk about him, talk about what his teammates think about him. They all rant and rave about him, kind of similar to how we do. And they love him as a leader. So definitely excited to dive into all of that and really discuss Daniel Jones at large.
Yeah, and I also have another little segment I want to run by you and just get your ideas and your opinion on this specifically. And it's gotten interesting. So we'll start with this. I ranked the NFC East quarterbacks the other day, right? I looked at the 4 quarterbacks, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Dak Prescott, of course, DJ, and Jalen Hurts. And I was trying to think, how do you rank those guys? Obviously, I'd have Dak Prescott at 1. But behind Dak Prescott, you could make the argument that it's a toss-up. I went with Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and then Jalen Hurts. People seem to think that Ryan Fitzpatrick and DJ could be like neck and neck, and I tend to agree with them.
I agree.
You agree with them too. So I think that's pretty fair. The only argument I would say is that Ryan Fitzpatrick is older, much older. He takes a lot of really unnecessary hits. He's a journeyman. There's a reason he's been around the league and with like 8 different teams. There's a reason that nobody really wants him as their legitimate starting quarterback. We saw with Miami last year, they put in Tua before he even really had a chance to finish the season, Ryan Fitzpatrick. But he also has those Fitzmagic moments where he comes out of nowhere and carries a team and scores 40 points. And you're like, where the hell did that come from? We haven't seen Daniel Jones be able to do that yet. We've seen a lot more bad than good up to this point. A lot of that because of the offensive line. A lot of that because of a lack of offensive weaponry to utilize. But I'll tell you what, I think the potential for Daniel Jones to be much better than Ryan Fitzpatrick is there. I think giving him Kenny Golladay, Saquon coming back, a little bit more consistency in the trenches should all benefit him as a passer. And that's why I have him higher as Ryan Fitzpatrick at this point in his career. Jalen Hurts, the guy completed almost only 50% of his passes last year. He had 9 fumbles and 4 starts. That guy, I'm not even convinced he can throw the football, let alone be an NFL level quarterback. So I need to see a lot more from him. We've seen Daniel Jones and what he's able to do, throwing the football downfield, making some pretty tough throws, and being able to run at a very high level too. Jalen Hurts just has not proven anything at all to me, so therefore, by default, he is the worst quarterback in the division, Anthony. How are you ranking these guys, and are you as low on Jalen Hurts as I seem to be?
Yes, I'm definitely as low on Jalen Hurts as you seem to be. I actually recently ranked the NFC East quarterbacks as well for a Tony's Takes episode that's coming out this week. I went through and I ranked every position for all of the NFC East teams, and I did do the quarterbacks first, and I did have Dak Prescott as number one. I think Dak Prescott at his best as a top 10 quarterback in the NFL when he's playing in his highest level. And then I did have Daniel Jones at number two, but I also graded these positions. I gave Jones a C just because right now there's so many question marks, but he is starting to prove himself, so he's like about average. And then I went with Fitzpatrick kind of at a C minus. And the reason I had Jones in front of Fitzpatrick is because sometimes you get Fitzmagic and sometimes you get Fitztragic, and you never really know what you're getting week in and week out. Though you can make the same argument for Daniel Jones, the future potential for Daniel Jones is a little bit higher. Like Daniel Jones' ceiling this season is higher than Ryan Fitzpatrick's. Fitzpatrick, you're getting around average to really high above average or really below average quarterback play.
Did you just come up with that?
I actually said that in the video, the Tony's Takes episode the other day, so I was like, dude, that was really good. I got to say that again, you know?
You came up with that, though. That's pretty damn clever.
Yeah, I did come up with that. Yeah, thank you.
Good job.
Thank
Good
you.
work.
Thank you. Yep. But hopefully, when they play the Giants, we'll see more Fitztragic than Fitzmagic. That's the plan, of course, with the Giants defense. But like I'm saying, with Daniel Jones, the ceiling this season is higher. He has the opportunity to establish himself as a franchise quarterback this year, and I do think his ceiling is top 12 to 16 quarterback play, above average quarterback play and almost creeping into the top 10 if he can really refine his skill set and become one of those quarterbacks. But he still might be like 2 years away from that. However, like I said, this season his ceiling is way higher. He has all those new playmakers around him. He's young. He's shown his fearlessness going downfield, right? Like he's shown accuracy downfield as well. And then Fitzpatrick, he's been in the league for so long. We know what we're getting with him. We know exactly who he is and how he's basically just around an average level quarterback with high end play and low end play. So since you know what you're getting with him, his ceiling isn't as high, which is why I do rank Daniel Jones ahead, based on potential. If you're going based on their career, of course you put Fitzpatrick. Oh my God, I can't stop calling him nicknames. You put Fitzpatrick ahead just because he's had such a long and successful career, really a really successful career for a quarterback. But then, of course, I'll talk about Jalen Hurts pretty quickly. I really don't have that much to say about him because he really wasn't all that impressive last year. Eagles fans have this wild, faith in Jalen Hurts that I just don't see being fabricated in any statistics or film. He just wasn't that good last year. I think he fumbled, 9 times in 4 games, and a few interceptions in there as well. He just wasn't impressive. He had a couple nice throws on the run because he's an athletic quarterback, and he looked good in college, but, what are we really basing his future in the NFL off of, if not for turnovers in his rookie season and a small sample size with garbage around him? And this year, I think the supporting cast has improved, but it's not like a drastic improvement, and I don't see it with Jalen Hurts personally. Maybe I need to dive in a little further. Let me know in the comment section if you think I do, if there's more film that I got to watch on Jalen Hurts. But my mind's kind of made up. I don't see him having a successful future in the NFL as a starting quarterback. I think he might be a long-term backup, but as a starting quarterback, I just don't see it, and I don't think that he's going to be the franchise guy for Philly.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I spoke to an Eagles fan a couple days ago, an unfortunate situation for me, but I was talking to this guy, and I was like, what do you think of the new head coach? What do you think of Doug Peterson? What do you him being fired? And what do you think of Jalen Hurts? And he was like, our new head coach is an absolute moron. The guy, probably one of the most honest Eagles fans I've ever come in contact with. Very down to earth guy, and he was very honest. And I'll tell you what, he was pretty negative about his entire team. He was like, we kind of used Doug Peterson as a scapegoat for what we did at the end of the year last year in terms of benching, Hurts and putting Nate Sudfeld in. And Jalen Hurts wasn't looking that good to begin with. He threw a couple picks, and Nate Sudfeld came in, obviously threw an interception. He was absolute garbage. And I'll tell you what, I think for the most part, he was pretty spot on with his new head coach. Doesn't seem like he knows what he's talking about. Just keep in mind, he was using rock, paper, scissors, says shoot as a gauge for how competitive players were in the pre-draft evaluations, which, you know what, okay, maybe theoretically or logically that could make sense, but who the hell cares about a game of rock, paper, scissors, says shoot? I'm a pretty competitive guy, but I'm not going to sit here and act like a freaking maniac playing rock, paper, scissors, shoot. I feel like it's a pretty bad gauge of of how competitive you are. So that's how I feel personally. Jalen Hurts, I never thought he was going to be a starting level quarterback in the NFL ever since he was drafted. I still don't. I don't think he's a good passer whatsoever. 52% completion percentage does not scream anything to me aside from the guy cannot throw the football. I mean, good quarterbacks are at 65% and above. You know what I mean? He's at 52%. That is a huge... I know he doesn't have much of a sample size to work off of, but I'll tell you what, just that alone to show... And I don't know how you finish the season with that, and management is convinced you're the future, right? Like, and they don't need to bring in anybody, not even a single... I mean, there was a couple players on the board still. I think Justin Fields was still on the board.
They had the chance to draft Justin Fields, and personally, I think that they should have.
They messed up. They messed up big time. I mean, look, Jalen Hurts, sure, give him an old quarterback... his old receiver in Devonta Smith, who openly said with Jalen, his teammate, I forget what's his name, freaking Jalen Waddle. They both said that. They said it about Tua, right? They said about Tua wasn't a better quarterback.
They did say it about Tua, yeah. They preferred Mac Jones, but
they preferred Mac Jones.
I have a couple stats about Jalen Hurts I just want to throw out there, just because I really just don't see it, right? 4 games started, 1-3 quarterback record. That's not impressive at all, but I know wins and losses are team stat. But 4 games started, 4 interceptions. So he's averaging a pick a game, only 6 touchdowns. Not really anything to scream about there. And then, of course, when you do go look at the rushing stats, so he did have 3 rushing touchdowns. So in total, it was 9. So it's 2 touchdowns a game. That's decent enough. But also, I was right, 9 total fumbles in 4 starts. How the hell does that happen? 9 fumbles plus 4 interceptions. That's 13 turnovers in 4 starts. That's over 2 turnovers per game. I don't see... That's 3 turnovers per game, isn't that? That's ridiculous. How does that even happen? I know, everyone wants to always bag on Daniel Jones and give him crap for his fumbling problems, and then also bring up this ridiculous thing about interceptions that when he really doesn't have an interception problem. But then Philly fans, they'll bag on Daniel Jones, but they're dead silent when we bring up Jalen Hurts and his 9 fumbles and 4 interceptions in 4 starts. That is way more ridiculous than anything that I've seen from Daniel Jones to have 9 fumbles in 4 games. I mean, that's personally just how I feel. When you're turning the ball over at that rate, I know you could say the same thing about Daniel Jones, but I don't know, man. 52 completion percentage as well, 41 quarterback rating. I just really don't see it with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and that's why he's at the bottom of the barrel for me in the NFC East. But, let's talk about a couple players who are confident in Daniel Jones. And that's really what I'm excited to see. And Cam Brown, linebacker out of Penn State, second-year guy, was on the Matt Lombardo show. And he said a couple great things about Daniel Jones. He said, I fell in love with Daniel after the first week I hung out with him going through training camp last summer. He's just a different type of competitor. He's ambitious. I'm almost like a sneaky competitor. He's a guy who's very laid back. You're gonna sleep on him, but he's gonna outrun you. He's gonna outbench you. I took that very, very differently when I first read that. He's going to outbench you, do whatever he needs to do to get better, but he's going to do it in a silent manner to take care of business. I'm a big fan of Daniel Jones, and I'm happy he's our quarterback. I mean, tell me that doesn't sound like Eli Manning 2.0. He is a guy that leads by example. He's not going to flash you with all these crazy plays, or rather this crazy competitive nature like Jabril Peppers, that like Energizer Bunny type of character. But instead, he's going to kind of sit there behind you, be quiet. But when it comes to game time, he's there. He's active. He's competitive. When he's in the huddle, he's very, very out there and very vocal with the way he portrays everything. So I think that's a really great sign. But that just tells me that he's good off the field, right? Because we've seen what players are like when they're crazy on the field, when they're crazy in practice. It sometimes can translate to off the field and not be so good for the team. Daniel Jones is Eli Manning 2.0 in terms of character and him being very kind of humble behind the scenes, but also being very competitive and a perfectionist when it comes to being on the field. And I think one of the reasons, and this is something I read from the Dan Duggan article as well, is that he tried, and Daniel Jones admitted this, he was trying to make up for the lack of offensive production last year himself, right? He was trying to force plays. He was trying to be overly competitive, and that kind of played into him trying to extend plays when it wasn't necessary. Take the sack, live to see another down. Don't give the football away. Don't take unnecessary sacks. Don't throw unnecessary interceptions. That's kind of what it comes down to for Daniel Jones. Just being a better player means eliminating the mistakes that you shouldn't make at the NFL level. So I think that's going to be the goal of muscle memory, being a better having better pocket awareness, better mobility in the pocket, Anthony. But what are you thinking about this in terms of what Cam Brown said about him and just kind of being like a sneaky competitor? A guy who's very laid back, but when he's on the field, he turns it on and he's going to outwork you.
Well, first I want to touch on what you said about Dan Dugan and what he said with Daniel Jones. I think that's a really good point, that he does fall into the trap of playing a lot of hero ball sometimes. I think when we watched that Tampa Bay game this year, by far Daniel Jones' worst performance of the season, arguably the worst performance of his career so far. He just could not hit a target. He was overthrowing everything. The deep ball just wasn't there despite being there all season long. That was a rough performance to watch. He did have one really nice strike deep in the end zone to Golden Tate at the end of the game. But in that game, I do recall seeing him just hold on to the ball for so long, trying to make something happen, throwing the ball up into double coverage for no reason, playing hero ball. That's one thing with Daniel Jones. He gets into this mode sometimes where he is struggling and he wants to get out of that struggle and he wants to start making plays and jumpstart his offense, and then he kind of does some dumb things and he does throw some bad throws, or he does hold on to the ball too long and fumble, gets tunnel vision downfield, which causes him to get hit from behind and fumble. That kind of stuff, that hero ball. But that's kind of typical of a young quarterback who's asked to be the leader of an NFL team. That's all typical. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks young do that kind of stuff. Even Baker Mayfield, his rookie season, second year, he's really coming to his own in his third season, which is what we're hoping Daniel Jones can do. That Josh Allen leap is just unprecedented. We're not going to see that from Daniel Jones. You got to temper your expectations. But the jump that Baker Mayfield just had, I think you could see something more similarly to that for Daniel Jones, where he just kind of establishes himself. But with Baker, we also saw him play a lot of hero ball at points, kind of just hold on to the ball too long, gun that thing into double coverage and stuff, and sometimes he would get himself into trouble. But with Stefanski, he really refined that and really reeled that back in. I think with Daniel Jones, it's kind of the same thing. He's young, he wants to jumpstart this team, he wants to be the man, but he's just doing a little bit too much to prove it. On the field. But off the field, as Cam Brown is mentioning, as Alex just read off, he's doing all the right things. He's not doing too much, or not, at least not in a bad way. Maybe he's doing a whole lot. Maybe he's doing too much and pushing himself, but not to any bad extent. He's trying to lead by example and show that he's as proven to this as anybody, and that's how he wants his teammates to be too. It's ride or die for this team. That's how Daniel Jones' mentality is. He'll lead by example. He'll do everything he has to, put in all of the work that he can to become a better player, and that's the example that he wants to set for the rest of his team. And that absolutely does remind me of Eli Manning, as Alex mentioned. I remember stories of Eli Manning where he would be the first one in the building and the last one out, where there was, long practice days, and then Eli Manning, the whole team is going home after a long day of practice, and then the coaches walk by, and Eli Manning's in the film room for an extra 3 hours. I'm like, yo, Eli, what the hell are you even doing here? You're supposed to go home and have dinner with your family 2 hours ago. And he's just studying some film, getting ready for the next game, and it's like a Monday and the game is on Sunday, and he just doesn't care because he's that devoted to his craft, and winning is that important to him. And I see the same qualities with Daniel Jones and that kind of stuff. We're hearing those stories, that there are similar stories like that to what we heard with Eli Manning. That kind of stuff makes me more inclined to give a vote of confidence for Daniel Jones, just knowing how hard he works, how badly he wants to win, and how badly he wants to be the franchise quarterback of the New York Giants. That stuff really gives me a vote of confidence and makes me excited for Daniel Jones and makes me hopeful that he will turn it around and establish himself this season.
Yeah, that Tampa Bay game that you mentioned, he did have 2 interceptions in that game, which translated to 10 points. And, if you take those bad plays away, if you take those forced attempts or, targets away, that's a victory for the Giants. That's a win. And I think that's where you see wins and losses starting to accrue based on his decision making. So obviously, we hope for the best. More weapons should allow him to not have to force these type of throws. He should have better windows to work with, less blitzers, so more time in the pocket. He's going to have guys like Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay that he can throw the ball to. And the thing is, when you stop taking risks, you also start to mitigate your probability of hitting on big plays, right? I want Daniel Jones to take risks, but just not every play. Just not force it when you don't have to. Taking risks is not a bad thing if you're a quarterback, but taking risks when you're running for your life or you're about to get sacked or you're holding onto the football too long, those become risks into liabilities. There's a difference for a quarterback. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing. We need to see in terms of development and progression for the Giants. But before I move on to the next, and final player that did come out and talk about Daniel Jones and his growth and really what he offers his team, shout out to our sponsor, Manscaped. And we just want to do a little bit of a read for you guys. And of course, we've done a couple of these already, but if you haven't already, go check out their stuff. We have the Lawnmower 4.0 right here. And if you have any grooming needs, Anthony has 4 girlfriends. He's gone Mormon already just from the Lawnmower 4.0. I hope his girlfriend doesn't hear this because I know the other 3 will be pretty angry. But I'll tell you what, thing's an absolute menace. He's an absolute menace. And it has a freaking flashlight in case the lights go out.
You
know,
LED
if there's a
light
blackout.
is clutch.
Yeah,
I'll
go ahead.
I'll throw out there, I just used this thing right before we started recording. Funny enough, that's why I texted Alex and said, hey, we should do an ad read because I was using it.
Oh, thanks
and I was
for
like,
that
damn,
information.
I love this thing. It's awesome. I'm feeling as smooth as Sterling Shepard's route running right now. I think this thing is a phenomenal product, and that's why I promote it, because I really actually do believe in it, and I use it, and I love using it. And my girlfriend also compliments me when I do use it, so, or at least one of the 4, as Alex mentioned. So we'll see what happens for my birthday this week, and if I get any more compliments for it and all that. So definitely go check out Manscaped. Use the code Fireside or Fireside20. I think either one
Fireside
can
20
use for 20% off. I've used the code Fireside on there, and that one worked as well. But yeah, definitely go check it out. I love the products, and Alex seems to like them as well. The flashlight definitely comes in handy.
Yeah, and if you've seen In the Heights, that new kind of sing-along movie in the Bronx, there's a big blackout, right? There's a big blackout in the Bronx, and if you have your Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0, it also has a flashlight, so you can always see what's happening. A multi-purpose usage, right? Flashlight and grooming of needs. So make sure to go hit up that description in the bottom on YouTube, and I'll have it on Apple and Spotify as well, my friends. But of course, anything that you do for us goes right back into this podcast. It really helps us in keeping this going along and making sure that we provide you with the best Giants content you can possibly ask for. That's what we are here to do. That's what our goal is. That is what our job is, and we only want to get better for you guys. So please make sure to do that for us. Would really appreciate all the love and obviously the respect you guys have shown us over the past couple months as we get bigger and grow. It means the world to us, my friends. So let's dive into the last section of this podcast episode, talking about Blake Martinez and what he had to say about Daniel Jones. And I love what he had to say about Dexter Lawrence, too, which is a freak of nature. We talked about Dexter Lawrence a couple days ago, and we did a whole film review on him. Absolute menace. But I'll tell you what, Daniel Jones is not just, I guess, a good player on the field. Apparently, he also is kind of a leader, too. This is what he had to say about DJ. He's a guy that's going to step up in the locker room. Everyone's going to listen. He steps in the huddle. Every player is listening to him. He's demanding. He knows how to compete. We don't have a quarterback. We have a number 1 leader of this team and a number 1 leader in the NFL. That's a pretty damn positive review from Blake Martinez, a defender. So I'll tell you what, of course, the players aren't going to say anything bad about Daniel Jones, but the leadership portion is what really stood out to me in this one. And I love a quarterback that can really rally the troops, rally the team, get them to come together and really win a game. In that year 1, his rookie season against Tampa Bay, where they won on that game-winning kind of run by DJ, I got the feeling that he was a true leader in that game. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I sure as hell do. That moment, that excitement that he expressed really showed me that he had that leadership ability. And I think last season, the injury, fighting through it with a really bad hamstring, could barely move, another leadership quality. He didn't say much, but I'll tell you what, the players notice those things. When you're playing that injured, and Joe Judge said that could have been a season-ending injury, and Daniel Jones came back after 2 weeks and played the rest of the season. That's badass if I've ever seen it. So I respect the hell out of that. I know the players do. I know sure as hell Blake Martinez respects it, and Cam Brown, Anthony. But what are you thinking about this last little piece from Martinez? And what kind of do you remember any moments that Daniel Jones really showed you that made you think this guy is a hell of a leader?
Yeah, I think one thing with Blake Martinez is he is one of the biggest leaders on the team. He is one of the leaders of the defense. So for him to go out and say Daniel Jones is a phenomenal leader, for leader to recognize leader, great to recognize great, that does say something. And I think that's a key thing to point out because, Martinez being a phenomenal leader, being the quarterback of the defense, recognizing that the quarterback of the team is also a great leader, I like to hear that. I think that's exciting as well. And then, of course, any moments that I could think of where Daniel Jones really showed his leadership off, I think similarly to what you were mentioning, with that Week 3 start, his first start of his career in Tampa Bay, I was at that game, and I just remember the energy of the stadium changing once the second half, once he got into the game and went ahead and started balling out. They got on that final drive where he scored that game-winning touchdown, and what was really exciting about that, I read about it after the game, when he got into the huddle, he went ahead and said to the team, let's score an effing touchdown, and then they went out there and did it, but everyone looked around and said, did our quarterback really just say that? Because that's one thing with Eli Manning. He wasn't necessarily the most vocal, get in the huddle and start screaming to the teammates. But Daniel Jones just instantly got into the huddle, screamed at his teammates, let's score an effing touchdown, and then he led them downfield, and he did it and they won the game because of it. So that's the number one moment that I remember from Daniel Jones in terms of leadership, which was his first start of his career. But, I've seen a whole lot throughout, week after week. I've seen him do some stuff and really just be a phenomenal leader. And I've read a lot of stuff behind the scenes about how he calls people and about he, calls teammates and tries to recruit them and everything like that. So I've seen a lot with Daniel Jones. And
well, guys, this is, a little great episode talking about Daniel Jones and really what he has to offer this team in terms of the players and his teammates. Kind of instilling some optimism, some positivity, some confidence for us to work off of. And I really hope that Daniel Jones does take that leap forward, because I'm really excited to see what he can accomplish this year with Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, all these new weapons, far better than what we've had in the past. You have Kyle Rudolph, who's our tallest receiver we've had in years at 6'6". I just wrote an article about him, another great option for him as a security blanket. He's going to mask some serious issues for Evan Ingram in the middle of the field and really take this offense to the next level, hopefully. But guys, thank you so much for tuning into Fireside Giants, and make sure to subscribe below on YouTube, notifications on Apple and Spotify, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.